Hello, welcome back to the David Watson podcast. Today I spoke with Anne Montgomery. And has been a sports official, worked on ESPN, has written books, has fostered children, has taught in schools, has been on stage. Yeah, done quite a bit. And it was great talking to her. I hope you enjoy the episode. Hello, welcome to the David Watson podcast. And I just started laughing because I was about to do that little swear sentence we discussed. So, yeah, just to bring viewers and listeners into the joke, we were discussing what you can and can't say, and I was open to all suggestions. But how are you doing?
Great. I'm staring. The Caribbean is outside my back door, and I'm a scuba diver, so it's delightful living in St. Croix in the U.S. Virgin Islands.
Oh, nice. That's nice. So that was actually one of the questions I was, when we were trying to arrange this, and we had a lovely sort of dance around time zones and glitches with calendar arrangements. What's the story with Phoenix and U.S. Virgin Islands? How was that? How did that come about?
I mean, how do I end up living in the? Well,
because you live in both, yeah.
When I was a sportscaster back when women didn't do that sort of thing back in the 80s and 90s. And I was hired from a station in Rochester. I got a call from my agent who said, "You're going to Phoenix." And I had to go to Phoenix and be there in 2 weeks, move. And so I ended up living in Phoenix and thought it was the moon. I don't know if you've ever been to Arizona. It's magnificently beautiful, but bizarre in many ways. Like, it's not hot unless it's over 110. Okay, it just isn't. So I lived there, and then I got hired by ESPN, and I worked there for a couple of years. And then I was too old to be in front of a camera, which happens to women on television. And I scurried back to Phoenix, where a friend gave me a place to live for a while because I couldn't find a job. And I've been in Phoenix ever since. But I have kids there, so you have to go back once in a while. But my partner and I love to scuba dive, and we came down to St. Croix, which is one of the U.S. Virgin Islands. St. Thomas and St. John are the famous ones. St. Croix is the quiet island. So we came here to dive, and we went, we're going to live here.
Nice.
So now we do. So we split our time between St. Thomas or St. Croix and Phoenix.
That's nice. It's nice when
that is.
Yeah, but when you stumble across things by accident. Mm-hmm. When you go and visit somewhere.
Well, we were drinking rum we were in a little bungalow place, and the sun was setting, and the ocean and the sky turned like silver, like mercury, and we were drinking dark rum on ice. And I went, I want to live here. But we did.
That's what I mean, because that's it's a wonderful thing where you're somewhere and you suddenly actually no, I want to live here. Because
we did. It took a while, but we got here.
Yeah, was it worth it?
Yes, but it's very different culturally. While it's part of the United States, most people don't know it is. When I go on Netflix and it says this isn't available in your country, I'm like, I'm in the United States. It says U.S. Virgin Islands, and so it's like living in another country.
Yeah, and
it's very slow. It's a little third worldish, but it's okay. It's okay. I get to look out, sit on my patio, and there's the ocean, there's the Caribbean in all its blue splendor. I live overlooking Christiansted Harbor, and there's a lot of history here. I mean, it was the second place Columbus landed when he discovered America. Right? And so there's 500 years of history. 7 nations have ruled, including over St. Croix and the Virgin Islands. The Danish most recently. We purchased the islands from the Danish in 1917 because we were a little worried about the Germans in World War I getting a foothold here. We have several deep water ports. So the United States bought them, and sadly right now we have the USS Iwo Jima docked at my beautiful little island with 3,000 sailors, but I don't want to talk about that.
Hey, somebody will be enjoying that.
Yeah.
So before we get to like the 90s and the 80s where you were sportcasting, where was life growing up?
New Jersey. I lived right outside of New York City. I thought all kids grew up with Broadway and Museum of Natural History and Chinatown and Little Italy. I thought that was normal. Lots of opportunities, wonderful place to grow up. And then I went to college in Ohio. And I'll never forget, some of the kids went, "Hey, let's go to this city." And I said, "Okay." And we piled in the car and they took me to Cincinnati. And I went, "Where's the city? This is not a city." They were offended, I think. But yeah, no, I had a great upbringing in New Jersey. Though when my mother came up to me at 17 and said, "So you have to pick a college. What do you want to be when you grow up?" I said, "I want to be a sportscaster." And she stared at me and said, "Don't be ridiculous. I'm trying to have a serious conversation with you," because this was 1972 and there weren't women sportscasters. And so everybody told me I would never be one. They told me in high school, they told me in college. Even though by the time I graduated from college, they said, "Would you like to anchor this sports show the university is doing on public broadcasting?" I said, "Yes." And I went in, I was all excited. And they said, "Oh, by the way, the football coach, the basketball coach, and the baseball coach all refused to be interviewed by you." And I'm like, "Oh, what am I supposed to do?" So I was a little pissed.
Yeah.
And I was anchoring with a guy who did all the big interviews. And then I realized that on our campus, I went to Miami of Ohio, a very old, well-known school here. And we had soccer teams and hockey teams and tennis teams and swimming teams that no one paid any attention to, all the smaller non-revenue sports. So I started marching up to them saying, "I'd like to do a story on you," and they were thrilled. They didn't care that I was a girl.
Yeah.
And so I started that way. But then when I got out of college, I couldn't get an interview anywhere. Nobody would even talk to me. And I moved to Washington, D.C. I had an aunt there that was more like a sister. And I got a job in a bar, a restaurant, a fabulous restaurant in the 80s. It was fun, lots of fun. In fact, my parents had an intervention with me saying, "Don't you want a real job?" And I had to think about that.
Yeah.
But the problem was I couldn't get a job. I couldn't even get an interview. So one day my aunt and I went to a Capitals game. That's our National Hockey League team. And I'd grown up ice skating. I was an ice dancer. I wasn't very good, but I was one. And we're sitting with a gentleman who was an amateur ice hockey referee, meaning they were the little kids. And he goes, "Oh, we don't have enough referees." And my aunt goes, "Oh, Annie can skate." And I said, "Yeah." And he goes, "Well, why don't you become a referee?" And I was doing nothing but working in the bar. And so I said, "Okay." And I filled out all the forms. And I found myself one 6 o'clock early morning at an arena with 6-year-olds. Have you ever seen little tiny hockey players?
Well, only on TV.
Yeah, yeah, with their little jerseys are down to their knees and their helmets are kind of crooked because they don't fit, and they've got little tiny sticks. So I what I didn't understand was that this was hockey skates. I'd never been on hockey skates. I was a figure skater. And so do you know the difference between hockey skates and figure skates?
Oh, no. No,
It's
not
a
at
big,
all. I didn't. Yeah.
oh, huge. And I didn't even think about it. I went striding out on the ice, lined the little kids up, took the puck to do the face off, and I fell over. And I couldn't get up. And I'd been skating my whole life, and like 20 years. And I dug my blade into the ice to get up, and I fell over again because there's no toe picks on hockey skates.
Oh.
You know, the picks, the real sharp
Yeah,
picks on
yeah.
the end, they're for jumps and that kind of thing. I felt like 3 times in front of these 6-year-olds, and they're all staring down at me. And I thought, "Oh, well, this is humiliating." I finally got up, finished the game, don't remember anything else about that but the ride home. And the ride home, I realized I didn't know enough about sports to be a sportscaster because I was before Title IX, which was the law in the United States that says you have to give women and girls equal opportunities, right? So I didn't know enough about the games because I'd never played them. So I decided to become a certified amateur official in football, baseball, ice hockey, soccer, and basketball for 5 years. And that after that, some forward-thinking news director would go, "Oh, she must know what she's talking about. She knows the rules of the games." And that's exactly what happened. I ended up working for 5 TV stations, but I didn't get my first job till I was 28. So I ended up again working for 5 TV stations. I anchored SportsCenter at ESPN. Don't know if you know what that is or not, but
Yep. Yep.
yeah, yeah, and but there were no women. I mean, it was pretty much one woman in the room. You know, they hired women because they were forced to. So it wasn't very much fun at that point. And I went back to Phoenix when my contract wasn't renewed, and I ended up working for the Phoenix Suns, our NBA team, for 2 years. And then I was almost 40, and no one would hire me anymore.
Oh, wow.
So that was the end of that.
That's so weird, isn't it? It's It's very difficult for people to comprehend today what the 80s was like.
Well, certainly for what I wanted to do. And, let's face it too, as an official, I wasn't accepted on the football field or the baseball, the
Yeah,
diamond, and I was often told, I ended up officiating 40 years. I retired from football in 2019. It's the only thing I've retired from that I miss.
yeah.
Okay, Friday night football. But I was once pulled aside by my supervisor who said, you might get somewhere if you officiate women's sports. I said, but I love football and baseball. I wasn't very good at the other ones. And so football and baseball were mostly what I did, but I was always the only woman because they weren't used to women umpires and women referees. Today we have a few. I'm sure you guys have some too, in soccer and rugby, whatever. But it's still not horribly common. And to the bitter end, I wasn't really accepted. So everything I did, it was like, pick a place you don't fit in and set up shop there. And that's kind of what I did.
The only resistance we seem to have in this country, and I'm speaking from observation as opposed to trying to sort of speak for everybody, because there's still an opposition to some respect to having women talking about men's sports.
Yes.
I don't. Now I split them into two categories. We have female presenters. One of them, Katie, I've forgotten her surname, actually fronts the American, the US side of the Champions League for football, and Katie Abedo. I've probably really hashed that up, but she's presenting what I would describe as presenting. Right. And there's the three football players, normally Thierry Henry, Jamie Carragher and Mika Richards, but they're all talking about football, but she's not talking about it as a former football player.
Thank you for noticing that, because people come up to me and go, oh, there's so many more women sportscasters. I'm like, well, there are a lot more outlets. We used to have NBC, ABC, CBS all in every town with 9 sportscasting jobs. Now there's all kinds of sportscasting jobs, but the women still have the crap jobs. They've got sideline reporting, which is the dumbest job ever. I would not want to put a microphone in a coach's face if he's down 24-0 at halftime. And let's face it, they're only talking about injuries.
Yeah, and
they just get rid of the sportscasters, put 2 nurses on the sidelines, and let them do injury updates. Because, like you said, the woman is the presenter, not the one. She's asking the questions, not answering them. And I don't get that. It's like, sports are not brain surgery. There are plenty of broadcasters that have never played, guys who've not played. So I don't understand why people let women. But
in the UK generally, the broadcasters, even the males, they always talk from the perspective of never playing or never competing, right? And so even and the UK, to be fair, throughout my life, I can remember lots of female presenters on sports shows and stuff like that. And I grew up with it, so it's not really. But I don't care whether you're a man or a woman. I'm not really interested in listening to you talk about it as an expert if you weren't actually in that field.
I can understand what you're saying. I can.
But there's a difference between, and what I mean is the perspective is talking as an expert versus. I have listened to journalists who can tell you the stats from 1920, 50 years before they were born. Did you know what I mean? Because I grew up loving.
Don't care.
No, but do you know what I mean? So there's levels or different avenues, because there's people who have commentated, and commentating is a separate skill as opposed to somebody that's saying, I'm an trying to talk like they were once actually taking a baseball at 100 mile an hour. Like you weren't. But there's a commentator who has watched baseball their entire life, male or female, and they know how to explain the game to somebody listening. They know how to explain what's going on. And it's a different art form, whereas the former professional player is supposed to be trying to relay what it would be like in their shoes if they were in the game. So whether, I don't care what sex you are, if the same as I wouldn't listen to a male commentator talk about female football. I'd be like, you've never played in the female game, so you don't know what it's like.
Well,
Do you know what I mean?
here's the deal. As an official,
Yes,
I mean, I've
but
seen
that's
it
a
from
unique
snaps as guys.
perspective. So I would
Right.
listen to you regardless of what because you're the official, and you would be able to tell me from an official's perspective what's going on in the game. So I don't care. I don't care what sex you're talking about. I don't care what sport you're talking about. I can. For me, well, you're the expert in the room at what you did, and you did it at all levels. Does that make?
I was not in the NFL, so I wasn't.
No, but
I didn't.
But,
No.
but you know what
But
I mean?
it's the same game.
Yeah.
It's the same game. And the funny thing is, I don't know if in England you guys have former officials talking during games.
Sometimes
Here
they've started to bring it in.
They have several officials in New York and who look at plays and explain why the officials called what they did. And this cracks me up because in 1990, when I was working at ESPN, I was in the middle of the newsroom and I said, "Hey guys, you know what'd be really great? Get former professional officials and put them, give them access to the crew so they can explain what's going on." And they all laughed at me. And now every network has their former official explaining the rules. And yeah, I agree with you. You have to have some knowledge, but former players, sometimes they are so talking X's and O's and stunts and all. And the casual fan will go, "What the hell is he talking about?"
No.
So there's a happy medium there.
But it is. But I
again,
think
it's not brain surgery.
but I don't think it matters. Is if you're speaking about an expert as an expert, but you're acting like you're a former player, and you've never actually played at that level, or you've never played against that opposition. And I mean, we had a famous one here. I won't. His name was Robbie Savage, and he used to play in the Premier League, and he was criticising the former Chelsea and England captain John Terry. And John Terry turned and just said in a press conference one day, he said, "I don't mind taking criticism from the likes of Rio Ferdinand, blah blah." He said, "But no, not from players who didn't achieve anything like I've achieved in my career, who were bang average their entire lives." And I'm kind of with that. Do you know what I mean? Because commentators giving you their observations, they're not talking about this is my knowledge, because there's levels to this. I couldn't commentate, because really good commentators are able to give you a picture in a few sentences, and they're seeing the big play, the big game, and it's a skill, and it's a skill that's earned with experience from hundreds of hours of watching games.
Do you know what a beat reporter is? I don't know if you have the same term there. A beat reporter is somebody who covers a specific news beat or sports beat all the time. I spent 2 years covering the Arizona Cardinals NFL team. So I was their beat reporter for my station, which meant I went to all their practices. I traveled on their planes. I stayed in the same hotels. I went to every game. And you do that every day, and you do become an expert at what's going on in the league. So I felt perfectly capable.
But that's what you hit the nail on the head.
When they gave me the job.
But you hit the nail on the head. You went to all of these things. You watched them. You observed them, and that becomes a skill in itself.
Even though I didn't play, I was there every day, talking to coaches, talking to players, figuring out what was going well, what was going wrong, and I had to do stories every day. I had to find angles on what was going on. So by the end of that 2 years, I felt pretty secure that I could talk about the Cardinals in any way.
Yeah, no, I don't doubt. Like I said, it's just when they present it as, and what I say is that there's really good presenters who know how to get the best out of the people they're talking to, and then there's former players who know how to commentate.
Right. Well, you're right. Different skills.
It is, and when it's done well, it's just amazing. It's so enjoyable. But I don't know. It's like you say, there's a resistance to people, and I in England we've had female presenters for a long time, but we I don't know whether it's because the Queen was, we had a Queen since 1953. I don't know, because Margaret Thatcher was the Prime Minister from 1979. We can't, because we do still have the kind of, like I say, we do have opposition still to sort of females in sport places. We do, but we also at the same time kind of more open to it than I think sometimes other people are. I don't know. I don't know. It's a funny
It
one.
depends on where you are. Some people were perfectly accepting of me being there.
Yeah.
Uh, but some people were absolutely not. Same way on the football field or in the baseball diamond. Some people thought it was great, and some people hated my guts instantly for just being there. And you just have to have a thick skin if you're in
Yeah.
either one of those fields. If you get upset because people say mean things to you, you shouldn't be a television person. You shouldn't be a referee or an umpire because people are going to be cruel a lot.
Yeah. People are horrible. Do you know what I mean? Something I wanted to ask you actually. How did you from a young age? How did you know you wanted to do that?
As I said, I grew up ice skating. I started skating at 5, but I was not horribly serious. I skated maybe 3 times a week. I was an ice dancer, no talent. I was way too big, but I worked at it, and it was something I enjoyed doing. I'm athletic. I should have been a swimmer.
Yeah.
I ended up being a lap swimmer for 35 years, but back then I was embarrassed for anyone to see me in a bathing suit. Stupid. And I didn't want to get up at 4:30 in the morning, let's be honest, to swim before school. So that's what I should have done. And I also skied. Not great, but serviceable. So I enjoyed doing those things. So when I was in high school, we had what was called the broadcast crew. And it was the first half hour of school every day. Everybody's in a homeroom class, and we did announcements, and we played music, and we did all, what's going on at school today. And I was on that broadcast crew. And one day, I also was the statistician for the hockey team, because growing up in an arena, all the figure skaters and all the hockey players. And so I was their statistician, and one of the hockey players handed me an announcement. He goes, "Would you read this morning on the news?" I said, "Okay." And I went in, and the guys tried to take it away from me. There was only one other girl on this crew, and they said, "You can't read that, you're a girl." And I went over to the basket with all the announcements. I took all the sports announcements, and I said, "I'm going to read them all." And they said, "You can't do that. Girls can't read sports." And with that, our teacher came in. It's like 5 minutes to broadcast. He goes, "If anyone wants to read the sports, she can. Let's get the show on." So I read the sports, and the boys got angry. So the next day I came in, I took all the sports stories again. And so they started playing the theme from Mission Impossible before I went on. Dun, dun, dun,
Yeah.
that one. And then they started calling me Big Ann. Big Ann is up next with the sports. They thought I'd be offended. I loved it. And then all the people on the sports teams, the coaches, they would hand me announcements. "Would you read this tomorrow?" So under my picture in my yearbook, it says, "This is your local sportscaster." And so when my mother came up to me and said, "What do you want to be?" I said, "I want to be a sportscaster." It seemed totally rational, except there just weren't women doing that then.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's how that happened.
That's crazy, isn't it? But
It is.
It is. But it's just funny how these come about. Is there do you have any moments that were your favourite games or to watch, where you just something amazing happened?
You mean before I was in the business of
No. Once you got into it.
sportscasting?
No. Once you got into it.
I have some favorite moments that I was involved in. In people I interviewed that I really liked, or officiating. I umpired one day. We have a major league and minor league teams. I think you guys have a similar system. Yeah. And our AAA team was playing the Los Angeles Dodgers, which of course are very well known. And they let me do the plate. And then there was this big kerfuffle that I shouldn't work the plate because I'm a girl, and it was televised. And everybody was freaking out, but they said, "No, go ahead and do it." It's a little complicated. You know what the strike zone is?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, the strike zone is very specific in the rule book, but nobody calls it that way. They call it tiny little postage stamp strike zone, which is absurd because then games go on and on and on. And so when the coaches came out to give me the lineup card, Dusty Baker, who's one of the most well-known managers here in baseball, he lets the other manager go away, and he leans and he goes, "Can I tell you something?" I said, "Sure." He said, "We have a plane to catch." And I knew what he meant. He's like, "Get them swinging the bat, because if I'm going to walk everybody, have a little tiny strike zone, they're going to be there for 3 hours, and they don't want to be there. It's an exhibition." So the first guy came came up to bat. I called him a strike on a high pitch, and he turns and looks at me like I'm out of my mind. I always wanted to call the real strike zone. I got criticized for it. Guys laughed at me. That game was over in like an hour and 50 minutes. And I just striking people out. And if it was a real game, I probably wouldn't have done that. But Dusty Baker stood up the third base line. There's a beautiful Arizona sunset, and he tipped his hat to me and walked off. And that was one of my most exciting moments.
I like that.
Went, Dusty and I had a thing, you know. The other one, I was getting ready to go in the locker room, which is not pleasant. You've probably maybe been in locker rooms. They're pretty disgusting. And there was a big kerfuffle about me going in locker rooms, but the players would not wait around. So if I didn't get them in the locker room, I wasn't getting an interview. I wasn't getting a piece on the news, and I'm going to lose my job. So I have no choice. So all the officials, I didn't realize that the male reporters are not real thrilled about being in the locker room either.
Yeah.
We're all waiting. It was an NBA game, and the Lakers were playing the Suns, and Magic Johnson, who maybe you know who he is. I hear all this music. We were at the visitors' locker room, all this music, and everybody's we're like cattle, getting ready to rush in. And the door bursts open, and here's Magic Johnson, and he spies me, and he grabs me, and he starts dancing with me in front of all these reporters. And at first I'm horrified, and he always had this big, beautiful smile. Magic just always smiles.
Yeah, he does.
And he spun me around a few times, and then he went dancing off, and all the guys were laughing, but not laughing at me. It was like a moment of, they all relaxed a little.
Yeah.
And then we all went in and did our jobs. And I really thought people would give me crap for that, but they didn't. It was an ice-breaking moment, and I'll always be grateful to Magic for that.
Because it's a really competitive industry as well, isn't it? Because
it's horrible.
Yeah. I mean, that just sums it up in a sentence. No, it's horrible. Because it is.
It's you're going to die early from television because of the stress. It never ends. You just get done with a show or a live shot, and you got to think about the next one. And there's, I went on to become a teacher for 20 years, and my kids would be late. I said, look, you can't be late. If I was 1 second late getting on the set when that red light went on, I'm going to be fired.
Yeah.
They go, I'm only 10 minutes late. I said, you can't be late. I'm early for everything because I still have TV nightmares. I'm not going to get to the set on time.
Yeah, we have a saying in the UK: if you're on time, you're late.
Yeah, I'm always 5-10 minutes early.
Yeah.
Officiating was the same way. I'm the referee. You know the difference between a referee and an official in football? Okay, the referee is the one that wears the white hat that says I have holding, number 73 offense. That's a 10-yard penalty. After years of getting thrown off other people's crews because they'd say, we're never going to get the state championship because you're a girl. Got that a lot. I made my own crew. So I said, I'm going to be the referee. If you want to work with me, come on over. And it was really fun the last 24 years of me because I was the crew chief. And I'm the one that talked to the coaches, and I'm the one that signaled the press box. And I like that. The point is, if I'm late, I'm holding up teams and fans. I can't be late. We get there an hour and a half early because you can't be late in officiating. And so I really get pissed off at people that are late. All you have to do is call me and say you're late. It's that simple, but they don't. Seems like punctuality died.
My friends, I'm the butt of many jokes because I cannot cope with lateness. It genuinely, I'm at the point of like, if you're running 5 minutes late, in my head, I'm like, I actually hope you've had an horrific car accident because otherwise I don't know what reason you have for holding me up. And
you know what? You're absolutely right. And today, with everybody having a cell phone, and you're going to be in half an hour late with my boys, I'm like, I think you're dead when you do that. You can't friggin' text me and tell me you're okay. It's only a half hour, Mom. Like, no, we don't do that.
Yeah, there's the bit where I think you're dead, and then there's when you're 2 minutes past the time, I wish you were dead.
Yes, exactly.
I'm not forgiven and I've actually always been like that. And
but why? Why are you like that and everybody else isn't?
I don't know. And it got made worse. I was doing one of those coaching seminars, and somebody in there, one of the this is like around 2000, 2001. One of the kind of the speakers was talking about the tardiness of punctuality and people being late. And he said something, and I just never let it go, that if people are consistently late, they are effectively saying that I don't respect your time, I only respect mine.
Exactly.
And it's my time is more, your time has no value, it's not important to anything or anyone, whereas my time is. And
Yep.
so I take
It's
it
basically giving you the finger.
yeah
It's
that's how I feel about it. And
yep.
and my friends will joke, like, will really give me a hard time if I arrive just a minute late, because I'm so punctual.
Yeah, I see that.
Yeah, well, yeah. And it's just, I can't, but I don't, even as a child I was the same. I've got to, you have to be on time. And
Yeah.
on time is, you should at least be 5 minutes before you're due to be there.
Yeah, and there's I mean, I was in theater, quite amateur theater, and if you're not going to be there when the curtain goes up, that's a problem.
Mm,
It's like you're holding up everybody else,
yeah.
and yet I have all kinds of people say, "Oh, it's no big deal to be late." Yeah, it is. It is a big deal.
Yeah, I don't, people like, I don't know what the big deal is. It's just like, well, what else do you not have any discipline in your life with?
Well,
It's a habit. And I'm a judgmental person about things like that.
me too.
Do you know what I mean? I mean, people say, like, Jesus is watching. Yeah, well, so am I. And I'm judging.
Oh yeah, I hate when they say, "Don't judge me." Well, that's what everybody does.
Yeah.
24 hours a day, they judge you. Get over it.
The
Get
last,
used to it.
the last time it was an issue, as I'm saying this, I'm thinking of my friends Rossi and Ryan. I was round their house the other day, because they're starting a podcast. They used to have a radio show, they're starting a podcast, and they just wanted to know, like, how I'm doing it, what platforms I use, and stuff like that. So it was a good chat, because I haven't seen them. The last time I've seen them, there was a group of us all used to work together, and there was about 10 of us, and we had arranged to go for lunch, and we'd sat at the tables. Ryan and Rossi hadn't arrived yet. The time was quite clear what time we were all meeting. And the waitress, like, she done, come over, took the drinks, and then it's like, "Are you ready to order?" And everyone's like, "Oh, no." And I was like, "Yeah, I am." And they're like, "Ryan and Rossi aren't here?" And I said, "I am." And they knew what time they were supposed to arrive. By the time, like, Ryan and Rossi, I'd already started eating. And I wouldn't wait. And they were like, "Oh, well,
No.
we're not ready to order." And I said, "Well, my exact words, well, I'll fucking start without you." So, I mean, we agreed, this is what time we were meeting. This is what time I want my lunch. And yeah,
We are clearly on the same team.
yeah, exactly. Do you know what I mean? But by the time they walked in, my starter had arrived, and and they knew exactly what had happened, and everyone else is awkward about it, and I'm just like, sit down. Nice to see you. Glad you could get here. And yeah, I don't like waiting. I don't like waiting for people. But like yourself, I'm sure if somebody rings ahead, says, "Look, I'm ever so sorry, such and such has happened."
That's fine. That's fine.
Yeah, But so after, what were you teaching when you were teaching? What was it? What subjects?
Well, there was a little break in there when I found I couldn't get a job in TV. My agent kept saying, "Oh, you'll get a job," and months went by, and months went by, and I was in the middle of a nasty end of a marriage at the time. My ex-husband was an alcoholic chef, and that was a mess. But I went back to Phoenix, and no one would hire me to do anything. My old boss at Channel 10 there said, "Oh, I'm going to have a job for you in 4 months. Hold on." And then I'm going, "Great, I'm going to go back on TV, work with the Cardinals again." And I opened the paper one morning, and it had said my boss had been fired.
Oh.
And the new guy was one of those little tiny guys who had little man complex, who basically said, "Why should I hire you? How do I know you're any good?" And I said, "Well, I was just on national TV for, I had 2 years, and I worked at your station for 2 years, talked to some of the people I worked with, they're here," and he wouldn't hire me. So I couldn't get a job. I had no money. I was in debt. I had nowhere to live. I had 2 big dogs and 4 cats. And yeah, my friend said, "Come back to Phoenix." I said, "You just bought a brand new condo." I said, "I have all these animals." She said, "Bring them."
Oh, bless her.
And yeah, I will always be grateful to Abby. And I got there and couldn't find a job. It got so bad that I went, "Well, I can bartend." And so I went, there was a brand new sports bar. And I went in and they needed a bartender. I said, look, I can entertain your clientele whether they're sober or not, and I can make a hell of a cocktail. And I'll never forget this manager looking me up and down. And he said, I don't think so. And I realized at that moment he wanted a 20 something in a short skirt and a push up bra.
Yeah.
And I was almost 40. And that wasn't happening. So the only thing I could find to do was to go back to officiating. Now, I never actually quit. When I was at ESPN, they wouldn't let me, but every other station liked that I officiated. It was good PR with the community.
Yeah.
So I pulled out my gear and I went back to umpiring Little League and Pop Warner football, which is kids in high school. And I was horrified that I might meet someone I used to know because I didn't want them to say, after being on national television, what are you doing now?
Yeah.
Officiating kids' sports. I hid behind my gear because I was embarrassed. And I remember one day I went to the grocery store after a baseball game. I'm wearing a sweaty T-shirt and you know my umpire pants and my big shoes. And I went in and some guy staring at me in the grocery store. And he comes up to me and he goes, "Didn't you used to be somebody?" And that's what I didn't. So I will now admit to you that I was depressed.
Yeah.
I was seriously depressed. I didn't know what to do. I was totally lost. And then one day, my husband was a dick, and I used to make a lot of money, and now I didn't make any money, and that was a point of contention. And one day, I went to umpire a baseball game, and I met this gentleman who was a Vietnam veteran, who was a war hero, who was dying of Agent Orange poisoning. And he and I became umpiring partners for 5 years. And when you're umpire partner, especially when you do double headers, you go to the game, you dress at baseball, you dress in the parking lot, you hang out between games, you chat. And so he would tell me these absolutely horrendous stories about Vietnam. And he had 8 kids, and we just became best friends. And I would bitch the entire time. My husband's an ass. I can't get a job. I'm in debt. I don't know what to do. I don't want to see people I know. And slowly but surely, I started to listen to what he was saying. And he would say how beautiful the Vietnamese people were. And he would tell me beautiful stories and then horrible stories. And he'd been wounded and left for dead. And his family buried him at home because they said he was dead, but he wasn't. And slowly but surely, I started to realize I was an ass. That the stuff I thought was important was not important at all. Oh, poor me, I'm not pretty enough to be on TV anymore. Oh, too bad. And so he never bitched about anything. And people kept telling me, including him, that I should go be a teacher. I said, I don't want to be a teacher. I want to be a sportscaster. He said, no, you've been working around kids your whole life because of officiating. Go be a teacher. And so finally it took me 4 years of whining to go back to college, get another degree to be a teacher. And I ended up teaching at a Title I school, which in our country means 75% of the kids live in poverty. And I started out teaching video production and newspaper. I then became a reading specialist because most of our kids couldn't read. The kids were dealing with abuse and neglect and drugs and gangs and foster care. And it's funny, I was a hard ass because I came from TV and the field and you have to be on time. And of course, the punctuality thing that we spoke of. And one day I was haranguing my students because they did a shit job on their show. Everything was late, nothing was good. And so I'm yelling at them. And this little girl stands up and she goes, "We don't like you." And I went, "What?" She said, "We don't like you and we don't need you." And every kid in that class left. They all walked out. And I'm alone in front of a classroom crying. I don't normally cry in public, but I'm crying. And I didn't know what I did wrong. I was trying to prepare them for the real world. And another teacher came to me and she said, "Have you ever considered being nicer?" And I said, "Nicer? There's no nice in the newsroom. There's no nice in football. What do you mean nicer?" She goes, "You need to be nicer. They're kids." So I didn't pay much attention to that till a little while later. A kid was chronically late. I dragged him out of the classroom. I read him the riot act, and he was 14. And he's staring at his shoes, and he goes, "Miss Montgomery, I'm so sorry, but I had to sleep on my uncle's couch last night, and I don't know the bus system from there, and I'm so sorry I'm late. I don't know where I'm going to sleep every night." And I went, oh shit, this kid is homeless. And the light bulb went off and said, you need to be nicer. And from that day on, I made it a point to get to know all of my kids, find out what they're dealing with. We had about 400 kids in foster care with all those nightmares. And I tried to understand what they were going through because let's face it, is a kid going to care about homework if they haven't eaten for 2 days or they don't have shoes and it's winter? Or so at my school, we provided 2 meals a day. We would send home boxes of food over the weekend because there might not be food. We had a room that we had clothes and shoes and backpacks and toiletries. Kids could take them. You didn't even have to tell us who you were. You could come in and take whatever you needed. And I was realizing what a spoiled brat I'd been most of my life. And that all the stuff I thought was important simply wasn't.
It's difficult though, isn't it? It's difficult though, isn't it? Because context matters. And, did you mean, if you're, say, a middle class kid, you better be turning up on time because you got fuck all else wrong in your life. But like you say, but when there's a 14-year-old boy saying, look, ma'am, I'm sorry, I don't mean to be late, but I don't know the bus system and I don't know where I'm staying tonight and I'm sleeping on so-and-so's couch. You're like, yeah, you're right. Coming to school is a huge achievement. Thank you for attending class.
Yes. And so do you think I ever gave that kid crap again? No, of course not. No. But before that moment, I would have. Yeah. Because I had these standards. Now, I'm not telling you I threw the standards out the window. I didn't. But I learned to treat each kid. If a kid is, again, hungry, they're not going to care about homework. So I did my best to understand what kids were going through.
It's the compassion, isn't it? Yeah. It's compassion. You just like...
Which I didn't have before because there wasn't much in a newsroom.
No, for sure. But the thing, I think the context is really valuable because up until that moment, you didn't realise... Because when you look at the context, you then look at that boy and you're like, wow, I respect you so much for not giving up on school and doing your best. You don't know how to get here. You woke up this morning with no idea how to get here. And this is probably...
got here 10 minutes late, right?
But you actually... The amount of effort and requirement for that 14-year-old to get to school, to turn up. And as soon as you found that out, the compassion came in. Because you said like...
It has to. It has to. It's not... You can't just say school is about science and math and whatever. You have to help kids feel comfortable in your classroom. And if they're coming from a place where daddy just beat the crap out of mommy, and that's what they saw this morning, you have to be able to figure out how to work with that. We had a wonderful social worker. And when I was in over my head with a child, I was a rare teacher that had an office. I would take the kid to my office, sit in a comfortable chair. Someone's going to be here in a minute to help you. Yeah. Okay, because what's the point? You have to do that. Though sometimes I felt like they were sand running through my fingers. There were so many kids. And I worry about where they are now.
Yeah.
A lot of but I wish I'd been nicer sooner.
Yeah, but it's relative though, isn't it? Because if you'd have been at a different school, punctuality would have been an important discipline.
It is important. And I didn't make the kids think it wasn't, especially the kids who were athletes, or wanted to be on the team. I said, the coach isn't going to play you if you're late. It's important. I wanted to instill those things, but I had to do it in a kinder, gentler way and not just be a hard ass, which I was. It ended up being so strange because I got to know some of my kids very well because I taught journalism and they came back year after year and I worried about them. They lived in a very bad part of town. And so at the end of the school year, I would put my phone number on the board, which they tell you to never do. But I said, look, if you get in trouble, you don't know what to do, call me and I will help you if I can. So one summer, this kid calls me. He was 14. And he said, oh, Miss Montgomery, how are you? I said, well, how are you, Brandon? What can I do for you? He said, oh, nothing. And he called me a few times and I sensed there was a problem, but he wouldn't tell me what it was. So school's coming up. I said, I put you in the journalism class. I'll see you when school starts. But he didn't show up. And I was 2 weeks go by, called the number, disconnected. And I'm upset because I worried about him. And about a week later, I get a phone call. He called me in school. I didn't have a cell phone. I didn't believe in them at the time. And he called me in school and he said, Miss Montgomery, I'm hungry. I said, what do you mean you're hungry? He said, well, I'm in foster care now and they lock up all the food in the morning and my new school didn't get the paperwork to give me lunch. I said, can I reach you at this number? He said, yes. I hung up and I started swearing like a sailor. Luckily, there were no kids in my classroom. And the teacher who told me to be nicer goes, what is the matter? And I told her. And she said, oh, well, if you care so much, call foster care and say he can come and live with you. I said, don't be ridiculous. I'm 55 years old. I've never had any children. I couldn't have children of my own, which bothered me for quite a while. And then I got over it. I said, I've never been a mother. I don't know how to be a mother. She said, then stop complaining. I called foster care. 2 weeks later, I was a foster mom, went to foster mom school for 10 weeks. And today, 5 young people have either been my legal foster children or kids that needed a place to get their
together.
feet solidly on the ground. I have 4 sons and a daughter, and now I'm a grandma. My oldest son Brandon has a little boy who's
So you
8.
you got Brandon.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I still have 2 at home, but it's because we don't live there all the time.
Yeah, of
So
course.
it's good that the boys are at that, taking care of the animals and everything. But yeah, I'm a mom and I'm a grandma. And if I hadn't been thrown out of TV and become an official and people pushed me into teaching, I wouldn't be a mom. Isn't life funny?
Yeah, no, it is. It does. It's I don't really talk about it much because my main job is head injuries, head injury rehabilitation. I run care teams, but that's only because I met what we call an occupational therapist in the UK, and she was a case manager. I only met her because I was at writing classes in the evening, and the only reason I was at writing classes is because I nearly went to prison and ended up bankrupt and did like 200 odd hours of community service for fucking about in my 20s, and but
look what happened.
Yeah, exactly. And I've genuinely, I got to like my early 30s, and like I just finished all my community service, and I've been made bankrupt, and you just like, well, you got to go and learn some new things because life's not working out for you at the moment. And I learned I did a counselling. I got a counselling qualification, but in the evenings, a couple of nights a week or one night a week, I was going to a writing class, just to try something. Just no reason other than you've got to do something that's different. You can't just keep the same pattern. You got to go and meet new people. You got to go and do things you've not done before and might be uncomfortable with. And and I met this lovely lady called Janet McLean, who said to me, "I've got this young guy. He can be a bit aggressive. Would you mind working with him? Would you be interested?" And because I've just been sitting next to her one night a week for 6 weeks, and she sort of like conversation takes you in a direction. And I was just like, well, actually, I'm an ex-offender. And she said, yeah, that's fine. Everyone deserves a second chance. And it was just like, yeah. And I've been doing that now since 2006.
And see how
Yeah.
I think we decide what we want, and we have this very narrow track. It's like athletes. This is all I'm going to be, but that's going to end.
Yeah.
It's going to, whatever we're doing is going to stop at some point, and we're going to still be living, and we need to find other things. We need to expand our lives like you did. You went, I think I'll take this course, which just because I need to find something different.
Mm-hmm.
And I think humans are very upset by change.
Oh, yeah.
And we can't be. I mean, I wouldn't change anything at this point. I would have gone through all that crap to be where I am now. I wouldn't change it, even though some of it was horrible.
Yeah, no, that's it. When I look at my own stubbornness and my own pride, like, I don't want to be a bloody care worker. Do you know what I mean? Like, and now when I look back and I see the young men that I helped, the difference it made in their lives, and and I mean, this is like, no, but you know what I mean. When I think about it, there's people that there's one person I helped him learn to walk again, and do you know what I mean? And things like that. There's a couple of other people because of difficulties. I've saved their lives a few times. Like I genuinely saved their lives and stuff. And when you look at it, when I look at it like that, it's like maybe it wasn't a waste of time.
Right. My 5 kids were all my students at one point. And whether it was foster care or homelessness, or one developed a horrible illness and was in a wheelchair for a couple of years, and they all went through horrible things. And again, I would compare my life that I thought was difficult to theirs, and I'm going, I'm a jerk. I am a jerk. These kids are suffering, and now they're all doing pretty well, and
It's
I'm proud of them.
yeah, exactly. But I'm like you. There's a pride and a stubbornness that's like that doing certain things is beneath me. But beneath all of that, there's this compassion for human beings. I just love seeing them do well, and turns out I'm fairly good at it. Do you know what I mean? Even though I'm still to this day, I'm like, when am I going to get a proper job?
Yeah, well, I know if I hadn't become a teacher and they hadn't said, you're not very nice, you need to become nice, I wouldn't be nice. And I'm not nice all the time. My kids will tell you that I'm not. But I might not have noticed
Yeah.
somebody suffering. But when you see teachers, we see them every day. We see them maybe more than their parents do. And so, yeah, I wouldn't change a thing.
The thing that was really weird that when I first got into it is I'm working with these like young male adults, like 18, 19, 20. They've got head injuries and, they're not in hospital. They're living independently, trying to make the most of it. And everything that kind of, it's really strange because once they've got that head injury, you have to figure out in really small little micro steps what's hindering their progress. And it will be for want of a better term, an irrational fear. But kind of because I'd like broken, I was 30, so I'd already had a long-term relationship where we had a house together that fell apart and it was shit. Do you know what I mean? Like you're saying, a crappy divorce and all of that. I'd been made bankrupt. I'd nearly been to prison. When they're talking about their fears, I was just like, yeah, do you know what? Actually, that's what happened to me. I was just this little kid who was scared, so I made some shit decisions. But because I'd already had all of this, like almost like top trumps, it's just like, yeah, no, I've done worse. I've done worse than that. Do you know what I mean? And it kind of almost become like a cathartic therapy, talking to these people, these young guys, about where they were struggling with their anxiety. And the anxiety came from having a head injury, and they didn't understand things the way they used to, and they would react to things in a way that would cause them issues. But
do you still see them? I'm sorry.
No. They've kind of, in a weird sense, I got them all to where they needed to be so they could take the next step, and they didn't need me for that. Do you know what I mean? Which is kind of was the idea. It's just like, one of them did sadly pass away. But it's the fact that when you were breaking down their anxieties and their fears, and it's like almost at a micro level, it was just like, oh, right, that's pretty much what I was feeling. I just didn't realise it. But now, having to talk to you about it, I realise the error, why I reacted to things, why I behaved the way I did. And it just you just start coaching them through these little moments. And and you, like I said, now I'm able to look back at it and think, yeah, do you know that was actually quite important stuff. And you without realizing, like you saying, if somebody hadn't pointed out to you, like, don't be so mean to them, and if that kid hadn't turned up late and explained themselves, you wouldn't be there. And it's hard for me to sort of feel bad about getting into trouble with the law because I turned into this really decent guy. Yeah, but you know what I mean. You kind of have this image of how your world's supposed to work out, and then it doesn't. And then, but you end up like I said, when is it? I went March the 17th, 2005 was when I went to court and got convicted, and I can't look at that. How would I explain, sit in a room with that guy and say, look, this is actually the best thing that's ever happened to you? Do you know what I mean?
We need flexibility. We need to take those moments and look at them and go, now, what does this mean? How can I make things better? And, up until that moment, I hadn't, and maybe you hadn't either, No,
I hadn't. I'd really looked, I was very insular and really blinkered about what was going on around me, and also blinkered to the people that, one, were either probably trying to help me, or the people that I made it difficult for them to be around me, in work environments and stuff. Like I had no qualms about telling a boss if I thought they were being a prick. You know what I mean? Yeah, do you know what I mean? And then you wonder why.
Social skills, social skills.
Yeah, I didn't care. Do you know what I mean? I'd be like, well, I'm good at my job. You know, maybe you shouldn't. But so how do we get to writing books?
Ah, that's interesting. The weird thing is, I mentioned that I became a reading teacher because
Yes.
so many of our kids could not read at grade level. Um, and I said, I can't be a reading teacher. I don't read very well myself. And in fact, when I was a sportscaster, I was always doing the scores backwards. And when I had to go back to college to be a reading specialist, and turns out I'm dyslexic. I didn't know that. I was just a bad student when I was a kid. And I come from a family of newspaper readers and smart people. And I was the embarrassment as a kid because my grades were not very good. And so when I told my best friend from my childhood that I was an author, she said, how the hell did you ever become an author? And I had to think about that. And I know how. When I was hired as a sportscaster or any broadcaster, the number one skill is writing. I'll tell 25 stories in the course of a night on two broadcasts, or who knows how many in a half-hour broadcast. I have to write those stories. I don't think people understand. People aren't handing us scripts generally,
Yeah.
unless you're top. And so I would get 24 stories and I'd have to tell them, whether it was a 10-second story or 30-second story, a minute and a half package put together. So I spent years telling thousands and thousands of stories for television. When I got out
Wow.
of television, I was looking for a job and I saw this ad in the local in the paper that said this local small newspaper was looking for a sports reporter. So I went marching over there. I went, hire me. This was one of my desperate moments. And the editor looked at me. He goes, well, you don't know anything about writing sports. I said, I just spent 10 years writing sports for television. He said, that's not the same thing. I begged. It was a $7 an hour job. I said, please give me a chance. And he did. And you know what? All of my stories started ending up on the front page of the paper. Then another newspaper hired me. Then some magazines hired me to write stories. And then I branched out and I started writing about other things. One of the greatest gigs I ever had, I was a movie reviewer. I was like, wait, you're going to pay me to go to the movies and give my opinion? And because no one of my editors went, who wants to go do a movie review? I went, pick me, I'll go. And so for a very short time, I got to be the movie reviewer. And then I wrote things other than sports. And the bottom line is, it turns out I was a pretty good writer.
It's mad, isn't it?
And yeah, and so the idea is TV stories are short, magazine stories are longer, more space, more words. And the jump to novels was not that big a deal. And I get to be a reporter. I get to go out and interview people. I mean, I always go out if I wrote like one book, I needed a cattle rancher. I didn't know anything about cattle ranching. I called one up, said, can I come and interview you for a book? Sure. So I went out to the cattle ranch. Turns out he was a beekeeper. So I made the cattle rancher a beekeeper in my book. So yeah, I enjoy that. I still feel like a reporter doing that.
You should start a
Um,
podcast.
love research. Also, I'm a history buff. And so I love ancient history and World War II history. And I've studied a lot of history. And so I enjoy writing about that. So I have a couple of historical fiction novels. I have contemporary fiction as well. But I write about things that interest me.
Yeah.
For example, in Arizona, we have a religious cult that's barbaric. They're polygamists. They marry 80 women, and the kids. There's no TV, no newspaper, no radio. They don't know anything about the outside world. It's terrifying. And they marry 13-year-old girls. And I went up there and pretended I didn't know who they were, and it was frightening. I'm not afraid of much. I was afraid of
Mm.
them. They were crazy. And I wrote a novel about a young girl living in their society
Oh,
and a
wow.
boy who escaped from foster care, who was my first son. Um, so, yeah, I like to tell stories. It's because I'm Irish, right? All those
You
Irish
never know.
storytellers. Yeah, it's probably genetic. But no, I enjoy doing it. It's a tough business. It's very hard to make a living. And when I speak to authors groups, I always make them sad because I'm like, it's almost impossible to make a living at it today with Amazon and ebooks and everything. But I write because I enjoy it, and I'm grateful I have a great pension and Social Security
Yeah.
to pay the bill.
It is. I mean, like you say, it's if you love it, it's fine. But
Yeah, it's
I think
and I blog every week, and that's like being a reporter still, so that's fun. But I enjoy writing. I don't know how that happened again because I am dyslexic, so it's odd. But I figured my way around it. And I still turn things around, sometimes the same things over and over. But I'm low-level dyslexic, so it doesn't really affect me anymore.
Yeah. I mean, luckily we have things like Word and stuff like that that bails us out.
Well, what I did have to do in television is I couldn't write my scores in numbers. I couldn't say the Lakers beat the Suns 128-92 because I would turn that all around and make them wrong. So I had to write them out in words, the numbers in words. And when it was late at night and 10 scores were coming at the same time, boy, I had to zoom onto that desk pretty fast.
Yeah.
But yeah, I still can't say numbers to you. But I don't care. I don't care about numbers anymore. So.
But it's one of those weird things. It's amazing how we navigate life as long as we don't realize there's something holding us back.
Yeah, I look at it now and how much my parents were upset about my stupidity. Back then, they just called you stupid, stupid and lazy. Well, I just didn't get it. I hated to read, and everyone in my family loved to read. I never read a novel for pleasure until I was in college. People said, when did you first start reading? And all these authors will go, I was 5, I was 8. I'm like, I was going on 19, or 8. Yeah, I was 18. So yeah, it wasn't something I grew up with, but creating characters is great fun.
How many books have you written now?
I have 6 traditionally published books, meaning someone else paid to publish them, not me. I have another one in a drawer that I'm looking at again. But it's, to get one, I have how do I say this? Getting them published is difficult, especially when you're my age. I'm 70. So once they want 30-year-old authors or 20-year-old authors, because I know a lot of older authors like me. No one's interested in us anymore. It's like, we don't have anything to say. I'm like, wait a minute, we have a lot to say. We've been around for a long time. But they want, 25-year-olds writing their autobiography. I'm like, so it's difficult. I'll go through. I have one publisher that's published 4 of my books, and they're very good. So I'll probably submit the other one at some point. But you have to do a lot of PR, and it's annoying.
Yeah, no, you do. It's
marketing too.
But it's weird because like when I was talking to my friend Rossi the other day, and he was on about switching from his internet radio to doing like a podcast. One of the first things I said to him is like, well, you can still do the same because it's audio. You can have audio and video, right. So you've got 2 formats you can use. But him and I were talking about the same thing: is if people think this is difficult, no, they don't know how many emails went between me and you just trying to arrange this.
Exactly. And people, to get a review of a book,
yep.
To get someone to review your book, and you don't want to be a friend. You want them to be honest. I don't want people telling, you love me, so I don't want you to review my book, right? So to get people to review your books, I had one book that was slated as a young adult fiction, which it really wasn't. It was the one about the girl in the cult, and it was there's some creepiness in it. And I had to contact young bloggers who were into young adult fiction, and their bios would say, I love unicorns and my favorite color is purple. And I'm like, and I got to beg this kid to review my book. I'm like, it was, yeah. And you contact hundreds of people, and mostly they don't respond. And mostly if they do say they'll review your book and you send them a book, they never review it.
Yeah.
So, with the podcast, reviews are golden. People that share your stuff, that's golden. But it's so hard. And honestly, there used to be, maybe my numbers are probably off, but last year there were like 2.5 million self-published books in the United States. Okay, self-published. How do you find the books that are traditionally published, which means we went through an agent or we went through a real publisher who paid all our bills? And I hate to be a snot about it, but it's not the same as self-publishing. It just isn't. So there's no gatekeepers, and there's millions and millions and millions of books on Amazon. And how do you find the good ones? It's frustrating. It really is. But I'm proud of my books. I'm proud that I have 6 traditionally published books. And, I've enjoyed it for the most part, except, again, the marketing aspects can be. But here's the deal, though. Television and officiating, all the abuse I took there prepared me to be an author. So when I hear young authors go, I don't want to send my book. What if they don't like it? I'm like, don't be an author. Please don't.
Yeah.
And what if he wants to publish it? Write another one. Write one that, I mean, the bottom line is it's like a sport. The first time you pick up a baseball bat, were you good? Could you hit the ball? Could you field the ball? Could you throw a football? No. You picked it up and you got better and better and better. Same with writing. I go back and read stuff I wrote 10, 15 years ago. I'm like, yeah, it wasn't very good. And now I'm much better.
Well, because this is the thing when people say like on social media and stuff like that, and it's like, what's the hardest thing about having your own podcast? It looks like the comments. And I remember somebody saying, this is described, I think I'm going to paraphrase, it's like, he basically said, Andrew Tate if you bought him off Temu. No, the problem with that insult was it made me laugh. But that was
a good one.
Yeah, but it was just like, it was just so funny. And I was just like, damn, there's thousands of people laughing at that comment where this guy is describing. And you have to, it's like when people say like, anything when you see something you've put out there and somebody's just whether it's in their mind constructive, whether they're just having a shitty day, whatever, but when you start getting a group of people who all start discussing how shit they think you are at what you're doing,
I know
you if you're worried about that, and trust me, even on a good day, you can sit at that, look at that and think, yeah, I could do without this today.
and you want to argue back, but you can't. You can't respond.
Yeah.
I've had people I'd say this one woman was bugging me because I had it rain in the desert. I lived in the Arizona desert for 30 years. Okay, I'm a rock collector. I'm always out in the desert. I understand the desert. And I said there was a torrential downpour the day before. And then 2 days later, there's a wildfire. This woman is haranguing me saying the desert would still be wet. It wouldn't burn. I'm like, you have no idea. The water evaporates in like half an hour. And stupid things like that. And that's what would bother me because I'm like, no, you're wrong. You're completely wrong.
Oh,
but I just let it go. And so she gave, and then another woman rated my most recent book, Your Forgotten Sons, which is inspired by a real story about World War II. A man who fought for the United States, or fought for the Allies, and he was in the Graves Registration Service. Do you know what that is?
Yeah. That's finding the recovering the people. Isn't it?
Locate, identify, and bury the dead. Okay, when you go to Normandy, that cemetery, he and his men had built that. Okay, he was at the Battle of the Bulge. He was at Normandy. It was horrible, and I wrote a book for his family. They gave me his letters home, and I wrote one of the most difficult book I've ever written because it was so necessarily gruesome. And I think I can't remember the word. There was one word, desiccated, the word desiccated. I used it 3 times in that novel. And another woman harangued me for using desiccated 3 times. I'm like, do you have a life?
Yeah.
Except that I used one word 3 times.
I know, it's just... And it's just like, you must have read the entire book and that's what you took from it.
Right, exactly. And I don't care if people don't like my books, it's okay. But to pick something like that, or they didn't like the title, I'm like, well, did you read the book? I mean,
this is the life of somebody who recovered bodies and identified, we're talking about people who left their homes and died on foreign soil. And you're fucking pissed about desiccated. Go fuck yourself.
Right.
Like seriously.
But you can't get to them.
No, you're not allowed to say anything.
You can't,
But if you're listening, we hope you're late for everything, you miserable bitch.
But you know what? We have thick skins.
Yeah,
and I'm not easily try to offend me. You know, when people would, you might get your feelings hurt. I said, not only was I in television and a sports reporter, I was a high school teacher for 20 years. Go ahead, try to offend me.
Yeah, you've had some mean things said to you.
Yeah.
But just lastly, a couple of things. Where can people find you and your books?
My website, AnnMontgomeryWriter.com, and that's Ann with an E, AnnMontgomeryWriter.com. Everything's there. And you can get my books anywhere.
Cool. And my last question, my random question is, I want you to imagine you have a time machine I'd like it to be a car of your choice. Where would you go? What would the car be? And what would you be listening to on the radio?
It would be a Ford Ranger pickup truck, black.
Nice.
I have had the same one for 26 years. I just gave it to my daughter and I feel bad. I missed it already. Where would I go? That's tough. I like wild nature. I like being in mountains and deserts and clearly the ocean. So the location is hard. I'll pick the Arizona desert. I'm a rock collector, and so I'd be out rock collecting somewhere. And what would I be listening to? That's really hard. I love music. I play the guitar. The Grateful Dead. I don't know. I don't know. It's I don't have a specific song. I might be listening to Broadway show tunes and singing in the car, or I could be listening to
The Grateful Dead.
Dead.
No, but I like that. I like that. To do what I mean, because it is, 1 minute you could be listening, like you said, to Broadway musicals.
I really Jimi Hendrix playing the national anthem. The Doors. Be listening to them too.
Yeah, no, I understand that. I'm a bit the same. I'm not mad passionate about. I was literally, when I was doing the sound checks before this started, I started listening to Vivaldi Four Seasons on the violin.
Yes.
And then the next song I played was Fortunate Son by Clearwater Revival.
Absolutely.
Creedence Clearwater Revival. So it's just like, it's like, how do you go from Four Seasons on the violin to Fortunate Son?
I grew up playing the clarinet. So as a kid, I played the clarinet. And so I played in concerts and things like that. I wasn't very good either, and then I played the guitar for 12 years, and then I put it away for 35.
Wow.
I carried that guitar from place to place to place. It sat in the corner and stared at me.
I could see it behind you.
But yeah, that's one of them right there.
Yeah.
I picked it up again, and then I love theater and I was in maybe a dozen stage plays. And so I can sing every song in 50 stage plays. And then I like rock and roll, and I like people like Billy Joel and James Taylor and things I can sing to. So I can't pick a music genre or, I'd be singing something.
And in a Ford Ranger collecting rocks in Arizona.
I love my black Ford Ranger pickup. It is beat to shit. Because I never met a tree in the desert I didn't need to run into its branches. It's my rocking car. I mean, I have 400 mineral specimens in my living room alone.
Oh wow!
I have 20 behind me. I don't know if you can see them.
Yeah, I can see.
Yeah, I need rocks always. I'm not sure why. And one of my sons is a rocker too. So now that he's 20, how old is he? 28. He and I go rock collecting, and my partner Ryan is like, "Good, you kids can go," and I'm staying home now because he used to humor me and go rocking with me. But the desert's magnificent. It's the only thing I don't have here in St. Croix. There's no rocks, but that's all right. I have a few. I brought some down.
Yeah, you can travel with them. And that has been absolutely perfect. Thank you very much for your time. I really have appreciated it.
Well, thank you for inviting me. I enjoyed it.
And there you have it. That was Anne. Please do check out her website. It will be in the description, and look at her books, look at her work. And it's interesting when I kind of get to have conversations with people that have kind of, almost parallel lives, where you kind of did things you didn't necessarily want to do because you had ambitions elsewhere, and then things turned out better than you thought. And I'd say was probably more reflective about how great it turned out. I'm probably still more miserable, but I never wanted to do it in the first place. And I don't always appreciate actually how good it's been for me. But sometimes that's all it takes. It just takes a little realization that actually maybe you're doing something good, and you can have a huge, massive impact on another person's life. And as always, thank you very much for listening, for watching, for commenting and sharing likes. It all helps. And wherever you're from, whatever you believe, please do take care and be blessed. Thank you.